That's right, they announced the One Punch Man collab before I could even finish making this video. Kinda weird that they have a big name IP collaboration so early for these types of anime games, as it's usually used to draw in new players, but anyway, we're looking at Crystal of Atlan. This is an anime action kind of MMO with a magical steampunk theme. Crystal of Atlan being developed by Newverse, which is responsible for a bunch of games I've never heard of, but also Marvel Snap and another crappy mobile game using Ragnarok's IP. Another weird detail is it was originally going to be self-published, but ended up getting picked up by the publisher Skystone Games just a few days before the Western release. Digging deeper, Newverse is actually a subsidiary of ByteDance, which is responsible for this little app called TikTok. I'm not going to pretend to know any deeper meaning of this relationship, just a fun fact. I would be concerned at the swap of a publisher, but my guess is they feel they wouldn't be able to run the game in a way that Western players would like. Moving on, as we take a look at the character creation screen, we have 5 total classes: the Magister, Puppeteer, Fighter, and Swordsman, each having a variety of subclasses unlocked pretty early to further differentiate your classes. Like the Magister can play basically a pure mage, a dark mage, or the funny party one. And yes, unfortunately these are all gender locked. You also don't really get to customize your character here, but you will a little bit later on in the game. Getting into the combat, this is where I think this game isn't all shovelware, although there is a bit of jank to it all, as usually is the case for MMOs, but it all comes together into a fun mashy mess. Keyboard and mouse experience might be different, but I played with controller and it has 4 skills mapped to the face buttons that go on cooldown. Although not the most strategic or competitive, I appreciated that you actually have another skill tied to each face button, so when one goes on cooldown, the other one is now activated by pressing that button. This makes it a lot simpler so you don't have a million awkward button combinations to get to the rest of your kit. You also have a dash with 3 charges that charge over time, so you can't just spam with a few iframes. Same story for our ult. Later on you'll unlock a couple more, and these will rotate out on a cooldown as well. Then a pet skill that also rotates depending on the 2 pets you have equipped. Classes are also pretty varied. I mostly played as the Magician, which was this goofy guy that threw magic bouncy balls and other party tricks. He had this meter at the bottom that would give you buffs depending on certain actions like specific skills or basic attacks. There's also this meter that builds up over time on the top left. When activated, it gives you some super armor so you can spam without getting slapped around. Since there's only 8 skills to map, you get to choose out of your tree which skills you want to level and use, and thank God, resetting these are completely free. Combat takes place in instant stages, so for the most part you'll go through a level beating up some scrubs, then beating on some elite or boss at the end. Pretty straightforward, and into endgame you'll have more focused fights like some to fight bosses, series of bosses, or waves of enemies. You can also play cooperatively with other players, and a weird design choice is the use of stamina. Yeah, stages cost stamina, and the system itself isn't explained very well. Everything that gives meaningful rewards all cost stamina, but there are also these pretty boring automated life skills you can do that consume a different kind of stamina. Pretty unfortunate. I feel like not enough games give players the option to do some other meaningful side stuff, and I feel like the life skills here are mostly boring time wasters that probably are useful in the long run, but not really a fun aspect of the game. Back into stamina though, you also get more account-wide stamina that opens up once you hit the current cap, level 60. This is where I got confused, but you now have a bigger pool of stamina to use that is shared between the characters in your account. I found this odd. I really wish this would just be the standard from the get-go, not be locked behind level 60, which takes a few days to get to at least. Also, I don't think they'll have this anymore, but each day story was also time-gated, so you could only complete so much before you had to wait for the next day. Overall, a bunch of odd choices that I'm not entirely a fan of, but I also don't hate it. My biggest issue with it was the time gating of story for players and the fact that playing through the story costs stamina. It's very gacha game mobile pilled, which I'm used to, but I feel like it just feels more out of place here. Level 60 is also where endgame pretty much opens up, where you'll get access to more endgame modes, but I found it mostly boiled down to doing a bunch of weekly content and farming for random gear drops and gear upgrades. Speaking of gear, we have 12 slots of gear that have fixed stats, random stats, set effects, upgrade levels with fail stacking mechanics above +10, insignias with random stats and rarities to slot into them, and upgradable circuits with different rarities, fixed stats, and random substats to slot into those gear slots. Also, statted outfits that also have insignias that can get slotted into them. If it sounds like a mouthful, it kind of is. I think there are a lot of players that will love that there are so many aspects to work toward and keep getting better stuff, but the amount of random stats in these and the amount of things to keep track of and upgrade just seems kind of annoying to me. I glazed over the outfits, but let's get into monetization. First up, there is a gacha where you can roll randomly for pets and outfits. In these, you can roll random upgrade materials and items as well as what you're aiming for. I won't get into this too much as the game didn't really give me a lot of rolls for these, but these seem more so for the whales that would be able to roll these a lot. The outfit gacha lets you pick the specific item you want and has a pity at 60 pulls, and the pet's pity is at 150. The pets also take dupes, so there are big gains to be had for whales. At least for PvE content, which is either a positive or negative for you, as you can probably easily be carried by whales in certain content if that appeals to you. There's also PvP. I didn't play much of it, but it is equalized with its own separate gear. Not sure where you find more of this PvP gear, but you can't pay to get an edge here, so at least this aspect isn't affected by the pay to win aspect of the shop and gacha. As for the shop, there's a monthly login deal, some packs, and their premium currency, opals. As I haven't interacted with the shop or currency as much, these aren't explained well, but my observation is you can buy the blue opals, which are premium currency, and the rainbow ones are ones you also receive in-game. These opals can be used to purchase things in the shop or to buy gold from consignment, where players can sell gold for these opals. So free-to-play do have means of earning this, but I found that gold is something you never really have too much of, quite the opposite. Gold can also be used to purchase items from other players as well. To pivot off of trading, let's talk about items and being able to transfer them between your own characters. Drops aren't locked to your class, so you can pick up a bunch of junk that might be useful for your other characters. To transfer, say, level 60 gear into your account storage, you need advanced transfer stones. I never really needed to utilize this feature, but you can get 10 of the regular transfer stones, which make one advanced once a month in the Merchants Guild shop. I'm not sure if free-to-play players have other means of getting these regularly, but just seems like kind of a scummy gimmick for players that clearly like the game enough to make multiple characters. There's also a battle pass, because every online game has a battle pass these days. Overall, I think how much all of this bothers you will change from player to player. Personally, I'm not a fan of it all. I think one way it could be scaled down just a little bit is to at least make it all a little more attainable for free-to-plays through their consignment system of selling gold. And by that I mean removing a lot of the value of gold from in-game mechanics into the consignment and trading. Now that was a lot to digest, so let's move on to the story. Here's some would-be hero that rises up the ranks quicker than most people would, going from a lowly scrub up to the hero of the guild or whatever they were called. That is to say, this is an MMO story. It exists and serves its purpose fine. It won't make waves in literature like Animal Farm or The Grapes of Wrath, but it's fine. It's somewhere above completely skippable, but it is absolutely completely skippable. Funny that good stories are usually complex and intricate, but trying to go over the monetization was 1,000 times more confusing. It is oddly enough voice acted in English though, so there is that. I might have missed some aspects some want me to go over, as I haven't really covered MMOs before, so in advance, my bad. The last thing I can think of people might care about is the endgame. The final mode in endgame, which I didn't interact with, was Hex Chess, which goes up to playing with 8 players, where you'll get what is currently the highest rarity and set of gear. Seems neat enough, but I was kind of checked out by this time. Before that though, you'll run Abyssal and Void bosses to randomly grind for gear and materials to craft and upgrade them, to eventually also grind out some Hex Chests, as because there's 12 upgradable pieces of gear, you probably won't ever have one entirely finished set. Now, I did say I was checked out, but I personally find most MMOs to start becoming less fun and more of a job come endgame, and here was no exception. But despite all that, I did have fun playing up to that point. I mean, I took one character to 60 and beyond and worked on another up to 58. At this point, it became a bit too time-consuming though, but I at least think the combat and playing with the numbers going up was worth the time I spent up until that endgame point. When I was finished with my time with Crystal of Atlan, I thought that overall the biggest draws for me were the visuals. Visually, the game isn't groundbreaking by any means, but it's a vibrant world with bright colors and a charming atmosphere. The combat isn't overly complex, and it felt pretty fun to play through. I never really felt overwhelmed at any point interacting with any of these actual in-combat systems. Load times were actually insanely fast on an SSD, which was surprising and a breath of fresh air. I feel like I haven't seen load times like this in quite a while. And I really didn't feel like I personally was missing out on all of the pay-to-win aspects. Now that is just me, I'm sure others would feel very differently, and that's completely fine, but I didn't feel like I was missing out on too much. As for some things that irked me, I didn't really cover it, but annoyingly you have to go to the settings to change from controlling with a keyboard and mouse and a controller. Using either one doesn't automatically swap it. This was incredibly annoying and honestly baffling how it even exists to begin with. And although I didn't have a problem with the pay-to-win gacha and shop per se, it did feel a little lame that there seems to be not much interaction with these at all as a free-to-play player. The pulls you did gain from playing the game was incredibly sparse, which is a little wild when it seems like the price tags for entry to something like the gacha is incredibly high. The time and pre-level 60 stamina gating felt really out of place and kind of sucked me out of the experience. Although these are usually to pad out content so players can't just rush through, it really ruined the progressive experience of just going through the story even. Also, the gearing just seems incredibly annoying. I pretty much didn't upgrade any of my stuff or bother with all of the slottable shit the entire way through. I forget which one, but I think it was insignias. You can't just take off either. They would be destroyed if you wanted to swap them out. And last, I suppose it'd be the kind of more boring endgame loop. It's pretty much blast some bosses' asses open repeatedly and pray to RNGesus. These fights don't feel like a balanced dance of interesting mechanics, especially compared to something like Lost Ark's raids. Maybe Hex Chest solves that problem, or maybe there'll be more down the road, but for now endgame was just kind of repetitive and uninteresting. With all that said, I think that if this game sounds like it might be up your alley and any of the cons I talked about don't really bother you, I definitely recommend you check it out. I feel like this is a game you could easily dump a lot of time into, and although the combat isn't particularly complex, that was part of the appeal for me. It's fun to just see flashy animations go off and whoop some ass. Thanks everyone for watching. Let me know what you think of Crystal of Atlan and if you'll be checking it out for the One Punch Man collab. I'll probably log back in to see what's going on, but till then, thanks everyone for watching, take care, and I'll see you.